first trying to make us vegan and doing a very good job. I had done a presentation a few years back on the vegan food, and now introducing her new products, Loopy, that I tasted personally. And so why don't we let Isabel give us, make a presentation. A few housekeeping matters. If you could please mute yourself during the presentation. And there will be a question and answer session at the end, so we'll be able to revisit then. And also, we will be recording this, so we'll be able to share this presentation at the end of the day, and for all of you to enjoy over time. So, Isabel, thank you very much. And again, thank you to Tony and Janet for organizing this, and thanks to all of you for joining. So, Isabel, up to you.
Thank you so much for the introduction. So I know Michelle said it's a presentation about Loopy, but it's more generally about eating well in times of quarantine. And I'd be happy to answer more questions around my business that I recently launched, which is called Loopy, and it's a plant-based snack company that is heroing the small and mighty lupini bean, which is an ingredient that is barely known here in the States, but we can talk about that later if interest to anyone. So plan, I think we still might have some people who aren't on mute. Maybe Swen, do you mind muting yourself just for background noise purposes? Great. So I'll share my screen with you. Let me just pull that up right now. And then we can get started. Okay, oops, sorry. There we go. Okay, great. So the topic today is eating well in times of quarantine. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of the habits that we can form to stay fueled and well-nourished during these crazy times. Just in terms of my background, I'm not a registered dietitian or a doctor, but I have a plant-based nutrition certification and a health coach certification as well. I have been running a plant-based podcast for a few years called The Plantiful. And then I recently launched Loopy, my plant-based business. So I'm very in touch with that type of eating, and I've been plant-based myself since I moved to the States actually in 2013 and was vegetarian before. And before that, I was a Luxembourgish omnivore with, traditional Luxembourgish parents who made me eat every part of the animal until I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. So that's a little bit on my background. And so let's get started. So the first question that I want to kind of address on a high level is, what does eating well even mean? And so wellness and health are very subjective, actually. There's no general definition, obviously, because for everyone, health and wellness means something different. And I want to say from the start, there is not one way of eating that is the right way of eating or the best way of eating. Now, one thing to highlight though, hey Claire, thanks for joining. Sorry. So one thing to highlight is that in these times where we are stuck at home and our lifestyle has drastically changed, food becomes more important than ever before. And so I'm sure you've all gone through different phases in terms of your eating habits in this quarantine. Some people, find themselves grazing all day long because they have access to food all the time. Some people forget to make meals for themselves. So there's definitely a change in habit when it comes to food. But one thing to remember is that when it comes to health and when it comes to maintaining health and also weight, which can be important for a lot of people, food is 80% of the deal and exercise is 20%. So we sometimes think that, oh, going outside and exercising all day and going to the gym is really what makes us healthy. I think exercise is wonderful for maintenance, but really what you eat is what you are. And that is true. And that is more true now than ever. So eating healthy, another piece to remember is that, we all have our own habits and our own needs. And so there's not one diet that fits for everyone. And so it's important to remember that bioindividuality is a real thing. So for instance, certain people might have food intolerances or food allergies and won't be able to eat specific things. Some people are more active than others. Even in these times of quarantine, you find some people being in front of Zoom workouts all the time and others don't do much of that. So it's important to keep in mind again that, there's not one diet that fits it all. That being said, I will say that there has been a lot of research done around plant-based eating in general. And there is a lot of evidence that is a diet that is extremely health supportive. And so important to keep in mind, it's not about going vegan entirely or only eating plant-based. It's very much a spectrum. And sometimes people think it doesn't make a difference if I'm not doing it entirely, it's not going to have an impact. That's not true. Every meal that you include more plants into your diet has a positive impact on your diet, on your wellness, on your health. And again, that is more important now that we are stuck at home than ever before. So I love this quote. Michael Pollan is an author that you might be familiar with. He's written really interesting things about food and other topics. And in his book, Food Rules, which I highly recommend, it's very short, he says, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And so that's kind of an overarching principle that we can all follow and live by. And that doesn't mean, again, that you have to be entirely plant-based, but it means that you should be focusing on eating plants and eating real, actual food that is minimally processed. Important to keep in mind also, when we're stuck at home and we are stressed, and this is creating stress for all of us, even though now we might be more used to it than we were a few weeks ago, our cortisol levels are increasing. And so when cortisol levels are high, we might be looking for more comfort food. We might be looking for more calorie dense food. And that also means that oftentimes a lot of that food is more nutrient low. And then again, it's important to keep in mind that you want to fuel your body with nutrition, especially in stressful times, which can seem, hard to do, but it's important to keep that in the back of your head. So let's talk about why plants are perfect fuel. So plants are incredible because there are a few things that they really hit home. One thing is that plants and eating plant-based is incredibly affordable. So sometimes people might think that, if you eat a lot of plant-based foods and vegan foods, you are spending a lot of money. I will say there's definitely a way to spend a lot of money on a plant-based diet. It's, if you go to certain places in New York City and you spend like $15 on a smoothie, that can definitely add up. But the truth is that eating plants, and especially when you cook at home, is extremely affordable. And so a big part of my diet, for example, consists in eating lots of beans and grains that I consume on a daily basis, multiple times a day. Those are super cheap. I buy them in bulk. And I cook them in my Instant Pot, and it requires zero work, but it's really easy and affordable. There's some really great websites now that we are not, going out as much anymore, or currently not going out as much, and we're trying to maybe avoid some grocery store trips. It's good to turn to the online retailers and see what's up there and what you can get from those places. And so 2 sites that I recommend for affordable plant-based foods are nuts.com, where you can get a lot of bulk nuts and grains and seeds, and then Thrive Market, which is a really amazing platform. They actually sell a lot of different plant-based foods. You get a yearly membership that costs, I believe, $49, and then you get anywhere between 20 and 60% off everything that you buy on there. So it's like a type of like a co-op model, but an online version of that, all focused on plant-based, not only plant-based, but a lot of plant-based options, mostly non-GMO and organic. And then another great way to get affordable plant-based foods delivered to your door is to look into, I want to call it the new versions of the CSA model. So I'm sure you all know about CSA, where you subscribe and you get a box each week with locally grown fruit and vegetables from farms. Well, there's some other options, and one of them that I really love is called Misfits Market. And in addition to getting you seasonal vegetable and fruit, Misfits Market actually will sell you fruit and vegetables that don't look perfect. And so don't want to get into too much of a tangent, but there is definitely a lot of food waste across the world, especially in the States and in Europe. And so a lot of times that's due to the fact that fruit or vegetables might not look perfect for consumers. And so what Misfits Market does is they will sell you, they will put boxes together with those fruit and vegetables that would be thrown out just because they're not aesthetically pleasing. They're perfectly healthy and fine to eat. So that's how this business works. And it's really cool because they deliver the boxes to your door. So again, no need for you to go to the farmer's market or to the grocery store. Another reason why plants are, in my opinion, the perfect fuel is because they are fiber rich. And so I'm sure you've been hearing over the last few years more and more attention put on fiber, and that is for very valid reasons. Fiber is really essential for gut health, and your gut will affect, or the health of your gut will affect your entire system. So the gut has actually more nerve endings than your brain, and that's why a lot of times it's called the second brain. And it has an impact on your mental wellness and mental health. It also has an impact on your immune system. So I'm sure I heard about prebiotic and probiotic foods. Well, all of those are actually plants. You can't find prebiotics or probiotics in animal meat, for example. You'll find some in some dairy that has cultures, but they are abundant in the plant world, and they basically feed your gut microbiome, which then again helps with your digestion and affects the rest of your system, as I just described. So really important to keep that in mind. Plants are also packed with antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals. Again, you know, a lot of those nutrients you can only get from plants, actually. And if you think about it, you know, you're having like the animal in a way as a middleman, but you could go directly to the plant to get those amazing nutrients and benefits. And so eating a diet that is packed with antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals, again, is less stress on your body, boosts your immune system, and protects overall health. And then there's a lot of research, as I mentioned earlier, that talks about lifestyle-related disease that we're all struggling with, which could be, you know, high blood pressure, diabetes type 2, heart issues. And there is a really incredible book that was published, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, by Dr. Michael Greger. It will be in my notes afterwards. And he actually analyzes the 14 of the 15 lifestyle-related causes of death in this country, and researched every single nutrition paper that has been published on it. And turns out that most of these diseases can be controlled, prevented, or even reversed through eating more of a plant-based diet or a plant-heavy diet. So let's move on to how to make all of this happen. I now talked a little bit about health in general. I talked a little bit about why eating more plant-based, wherever you are on that spectrum, you know, maybe it's only a few meals a week, maybe you are 90% there. But we talked about why it's so beneficial and why it's so good also for your wallet, and how it can be convenient. Now let's talk a little bit about how to make it happen on a day-to-day basis. And again, some of these things have changed a little bit during these crazy times. So personally, I find I've gotten more time back because I'm not commuting 2 hours a day anymore like I used to when I would ride the city bike from Brooklyn to Manhattan to my office. I actually get this time back. And so I have even more time to focus a little bit on what I want to plan out for the week. And I know that meal planning can be daunting to people, but it's a little bit like a muscle that you create, like a habit that you form. So you do it for a little bit and then it will become automatic. And it's nothing fancy. But it's really about thinking, how can you batch prepare some of your foods that you want to eat for the week? And so the way I personally do it is that I go grocery shopping once a week now. I used to go way more often when you know, everything was different. I would just pick up stuff on my way home sometimes. Now I do it once a week, so I have my grocery list for the week. And then I like to prepare certain staples in a batch format. I don't prepare it all on one day, but I do it like every 3 or 4 days. And so I mentioned I have an Instant Pot, for example, which is my favorite kitchen piece of equipment, because it cooks your beans within like 30 to 40 minutes. So oftentimes people are a little bit intimidated by eating beans and cooking them, because you should soak them overnight and then you have to cook them for hours. If you have an Instant Pot, you don't need to soak them. You just put them in there and you let the Instant Pot do its magic, and you have a bunch of beans or grains prepared without much work. And so I keep those in the fridge. I always have some types of lentils, like coral lentils or black lentils, green lentils, chickpeas, and then different types of rice and quinoa that I just batch cook a few times a week, put them in my fridge, and then it's ready, especially for a quick lunch. I just put together different variations of these different staples, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. So now, if you struggle a little bit in these times with you know, finding yourself being totally off your normal routine and your habits, which is very likely because you don't have this like traditional 9 to 5 anymore necessarily, and you're by yourself at home or with your family or your partner. So it's harder to keep a little bit of structure. And what we might tend to do is we might tend to graze all day and eat all day instead of having actual meals. And then we might, one, miss out on actual, you know, nutrients, and two, we might just feel like we're constantly eating, which is not necessarily something that we want to do. So if you struggle with that, I do recommend, you know, there's some research around writing down what you want to eat and like planning it out and writing it down. Makes you feel committed to, one, fueling your body with the right things, and two, it prevents you from this moment of decision fatigue that you might run into when you get to 12 p.m. and you're hungry and you don't know what to eat, and you have a meeting coming up in 30 minutes and you grab whatever you can find. And so bringing a little bit more routine into that, that can work, as I said before, with prepping, you know, in batches, or if you want even more routine, you could even write down for your week or for your day ahead, what am I having for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so then you don't have to make that decision and come up with a plan when you're in that moment where you want to eat. The other thing that I highly recommend is to stick with whole foods as much as you can. Again, it's interesting when you look, you know, I have a food business and I'm always looking at how the retail habits of consumers are changing. And it's interesting how you see in every crisis situation, similarly, this time that it happened in 2008, people will gravitate to comfort foods at the beginning of any crisis. And so now we've been seeing actually a lot of people getting over that first hump and starting to eat healthier and buying more fresh fruit and vegetables and more whole foods. So it's a normal thing that we want to get comfort, and we often find that through food. But the truth is, it's not really supporting your whole system and your health to just feed on super processed foods. And so I generally recommend, you know, try to stay away from processed sugars and oils. What do I mean by processed sugars? I mean refined white sugar. It comes in different names. The food industry has come up with a variety of different codes for white sugar, but it can, you know, sometimes it's called like organic white sugar or organic cane sugar. All these things are just different code names for refined sugar, and refined sugar doesn't have any nutrients. So similar with very refined oils, it was stripped of everything that was surrounded. So there's no more fiber in refined sugar. There's no more vitamins and minerals in refined sugar, and same with very processed refined oils. So I always recommend go to the whole source. So eat fruit and fruit instead if you're craving something sweet. If you're looking for alternative sweeteners, I love to use dates, date sugar, even coconut sugar or maple syrup. A lot of them have a lower glycemic load because they are more wholesome and they come with the fiber part of them still come with the fiber or other minerals and vitamins. So it's more of a food, whereas refined white sugar, refined flours, they are just kind of a vehicle, but like there's nothing left for your body to extract from that. So what that means is, one, you're not getting nutrients, and two, you'll feel hungry again and you'll continue snacking all day long. I like to also double down on some extra immune boosting plants. I love eating a lot of ginger. I drink a lot of ginger tea. I put ginger into different dishes and breakfast and lunch and dinner. You can, grate it and just add it on any types of stews that you make, or curries, and even in my oatmeal in the morning, sometimes I love to add some ginger, and turmeric is another great one to add, that you can even add into your tea, and that has immune boosting capabilities. And then the other thing that I would recommend is limiting alcohol intake. I just think, there's nothing wrong with having a glass of wine here or there, if you enjoy that. But if you're really just looking to have like a drink to unwind, and you want to do that every day, and you want to get away a little bit from alcohol, there's amazing kombucha these days that is delicious and a little bit sparkly, and so that could satisfy that craving. And then you can also just use sparkling water and add different types of bitters, and even like squeeze lemons or orange into that, just for some alternatives to your glass of wine. And again, there's nothing wrong with a glass of wine at all. I'm just saying there's ways to find some alternatives and mix it up. Other things to recommend are recipes. So a lot of times people, when I tell them they're eating plant-based, they say, oh my God, there's so much time to prepare, and I need to cut all the vegetables and do all of this work. And so I would say I make dinner most days within 20 minutes. My breakfast takes 5 to 10 minutes, and so does my lunch. So there's definitely not that much more work that you have to put in. It's, again, just a muscle that you're developing. So before I was eating plant-based, I was cooking, animal-based foods, and those are recipes that I would follow, and they would take me take time as well, especially when I made them for the first time. So it's really just about kind of learning like some of the basics, and then you'll be able to quickly put together a meal. So I love oatmeal because it's still cold out for some weird reason. We're in May, but it still kind of feels like winter. So I love eating oatmeal in different variations with different types of toppings, like different nuts and seeds, nut butters, different types of fruit. I use different nut milks every day. So I keep it like interesting and change it up, but it's super easy, and it takes me less than 10 minutes to make that. I'm also a big fan of Buddha bowls. So I was describing that before. It's just a fancy word for these types of like grain and veggie bowls. So I'll always have some type of plant-based protein from a bean or from a lentil, or I get it from tofu or tempeh. And I keep, again, as a reminder, I keep those in my fridge, like in different containers. So I just take it out of the fridge, put a serving of beans, and then have a grain with it. And then I add some vegetables that I quickly stir fry, or add some salad if I don't have a lot of time. And then I usually add a dressing that is more like fat-based. So I like avocado-based dressings, or tahini-based dressings, like the tahini miso, maple syrup dressing that I love to make, and I just put it all over. So that's great for lunch or dinner when it's about making something quick. I also like pasta dishes. These days, there's lots of alternative pastas that have more nutrients. So one brand that I like is Banza. They make pasta out of chickpeas. You probably wouldn't even taste it, but they use beans or chickpeas in it. So it means that there's more fiber in it and there's more protein in it. So that's a great thing to look out for if you're looking for some alternatives to regular pasta. And then other things that I love that are super simple are coconut curries and bean chilies, again, that you can make in a bigger batch and keep around and just, have a bowl for lunch if you don't have a lot of time. I've also been really into making some of these staples that I usually buy at the store myself. Again, I have a little bit more time on my hands, and a lot of it actually really doesn't require me spending so much time, because again, I use the Instant Pot for a lot of this. So I like to make my own vegan yogurt, and it's the simplest thing in the world. I just buy non-GMO soy milk, like a carton, like a Tetra Pak of that, and I put it in my Instant Pot, and I add 1 teaspoon of some type of plant-based yogurt. So I like coconut-based yogurt. It has cultures in it. And I just put my lid of my Instant Pot on there, and within like 12 hours, and I do that overnight, in the morning I wake up, I have plant-based yogurt that tastes delicious. I also love to make my own granolas. I just prefer that because I feel like I, again, have more control over making it a little bit healthier. And I will use different types of sweeteners than you can find in the grocery store. And also, coming back to an earlier point that I made around affordability, granolas can be so expensive, and they sell them in these tiny little packs. So it's so much easier and cheaper to make them yourself. There's some websites down there. Sweet Potato Soul and Minimalist Baker are some of my go-tos when I'm looking for new recipes and I want to kind of branch out. I have a little bit more time, but a lot of them are super simple. Minimalist Baker actually has a whole section called One Bowl Recipe. So you put all the ingredients in one bowl, and they typically take very little time to prep. So definitely check those out. Another thing that I think is important to address in these times where we're have maybe less ability to go to the grocery store more often, and if we want to eat fresh produce and fresh fruit, it's important that we know how to properly store it. So one thing that I do usually is that when I come home from the grocery store, I make sure I clean all the surroundings of my bags and everything. And then I have specific areas for my produce in my fridge, and I put it in there. And I won't actually wash my produce until I use it. So again, wash your hands after you pack it away. Make sure you don't put your hands in your face. But I do recommend that you don't wash your produce when you come home and then wash it again when you prepare it, because it will go bad faster. So it will stay fresher if you only wash it before you use it. Another good thing, if you like herbs, which I love to add because they add so much flavor to different dishes, to keep them for longer, you treat them a little bit like a bouquet of flowers. You just put them in a jar, and you put a bag on top of it, like a plastic bag that I'm hoping you'll be reusing. And then you keep that in the fridge. And it preserves your herbs for way longer than if you just put them in the fridge without the water. So you just want to treat them a little bit like a bouquet. A cool trick, if you're into greens like kale and spinach and what are some of the rainbow chard and all of these really delicious greens, if you find them become like a little bit floppy, which they do sometimes after a few days if you can't eat them quick enough, give them an ice bath before you prepare them. It actually works really well to just fill up like a bowl with water and add a few ice cubes, and you put your greens in there for a few minutes, and it will just revitalize them. So it's a great way to still eat them and not throw them out if they look a little bit less fresh. And then other great ways to, one, keep veggies on hand, and two, keep them good for longer, is to just cut up things like peppers and carrots and similarly, like vegetables that are a little bit harder. You can cut them up and keep them in jars with water, and again, that will keep them fresh for longer. Just make sure you change the water every 3 or 4 days. And in terms of fruit, I generally don't recommend you keeping exotic fruit like citrus fruit in the fridge. However, in these times where you might only go to the grocery store once a week or once every 2 weeks, you can definitely keep your lemons and oranges in the fridge, and it will keep them fresh for longer. Ginger, I like to buy the whole ginger root because it's, again, so much cheaper, and then I can use it in different variations and applications. And what I like to do is I like to actually freeze it. So I'll cut it up in pieces, and then I'll put it in the freezer, and it will preserve there for a really long time. One trick that I recently learned, because I love sweet potatoes and potatoes, and I noticed them sprouting a few weeks ago. So they started growing like little sprouts, and I was like, what's going on? And then I realized I was keeping them too close to my onions, and I found out that the onions are kind of, there's something that they're releasing that is affecting the sweet potatoes and making them sprout. And so apparently the sprouts of regular potatoes are actually toxic, so you shouldn't be eating those. If it's sweet potato sprouts, you can eat them. But again, I don't love, when our potatoes start sprouting, so I just keep them away from onions. Okay, some other tips around stocking up your fridge and your freezer if you want to avoid too many trips to the grocery store and still stay healthy. I'm all about frozen vegetables and frozen fruit. I know that frozen food has a bad rep, and I think there's a huge distinction between frozen pre-prepped meals that contain a million ingredients and simple frozen vegetables or frozen fruit. They are usually picked right off the farm, right off the field. So they oftentimes have more vitamins and minerals left in them than if you buy them in the grocery store. Because in the grocery store, they've traveled for a few days already. They were taken from the farm, then put in a truck, brought to your store, have probably been in the store for 2 days. So actually eating frozen vegetables and fruit can often be more nutritious. So definitely stock up on that. I also love to keep plant-based burgers around. I don't like the super processed ones like Beyond. It's just a personal preference. You know, I find them a little bit too processed, but I really like the bean and grain-based ones. One brand that I love is called Hillary's, and they are delicious, and I will always keep them around because they're such an easy food to prepare and really good for you. I also, keep staples like nuts and seeds and whole grains and beans around, like I mentioned before. I love keeping spices in my pantry. Tempeh and tofu, some people have some experience with cooking those. Some don't. It's actually super easy. And another good thing about them is that they stay good for a really long time. So I think usually expiration days are like 2 or 3 months out. So you can definitely buy a bunch of it and keep it in the fridge and go through it as you need. Yeah. So if you're over all of this and you're like, I can't be cooking anymore, I'm sick of it, I've been prepping so much, there are some really great services out there these days that are helping to keep you healthy and that are extremely convenient and delicious. And so a few of those are Purple Carrot, which is a meal kit service similar to Blue Apron, which I'm sure you're familiar with. It's all plant-based, so it's all plant-based meal kits. They change their recipes each week. It gets delivered right to your door. It's fun for anyone who wants to be a little bit more hands-on. Daily Harvest is a frozen, ready-to-eat meal company that is super healthy and really delicious. They have everything from actually pre-prepped, pre-chopped smoothie mixes to grain bowls to soups. They just launched frozen pizzas with these different really cool crusts like cauliflower based crusts. So they add vegetables everywhere where you don't expect them, and it tastes delicious. And again, you can get that delivered right to your door. And Implantable is a more, I would say, almost medical focused meal planning program. So it's very focused on not adding any refined sugars, only healthy oils. So another great option. And they, all those meals also come frozen, and you can just eat them, during the week, and it will get delivered to you once a week. Some other favorite resources of mine, I already talked about a bunch of them. How Not to Die and How Not to Die cookbook are, God, the title is just a little bit aggressive, but it's a really great cookbook that has super simple plant-based recipes that you can make within like 10 to 20 minutes. Again, this book was written by Dr. Michael Greger, who studies all nutrition-related studies that are out there in relation to plant-based diets. And then I already talked about the other resources here. So yeah, so that is it for my presentation, and I will open it up to questions and comments.
Wow, that was a lot to take in. I took some notes, but this is a lot. Excellent.
Yeah, Isabel, thank you for all those tips. That was great. I did take some notes myself. I also will second the tip that kombucha is a great substitute for alcohol. And I've been able to reduce I've never drinking that much, but I've been able to cut my alcohol consumption in half on that. So it's definitely the way to go. I have a question, which is, I assume you get back to Luxembourg as well every once in a while. Do you think these plant-based ideas about eating would be more receptive in Luxembourg or the United States? Where is there more growth opportunity
Yeah.
for both health and business?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think that, sorry, I feel like I'm echoing a little. I think that European food culture is not as open maybe to plant-based eating, because a lot of the foods that we consume are very much based in tradition that, we've been passing on over generations in our families. And like, as I said before, and I was joking, but my family would really cook every part of the animal, and we'd eat like rabbit and tribes and all these like crazy dishes. And so it was very much part of almost like a piece of our identity, which I think in the States it's a little different. I think people have a different relationship with food. I think American consumers are a little bit more interested in health-based claims and performance-based claims than European consumers. And I think plant-based eating has a lot of different angles. Personally, I think it's a great way to nourish your body. I also think it's better for the environment. I also think it's better for the animals. So there's all these different angles. But the health angle, I think, is working really well with American consumers because they care about, there's a lot of consumers here that care a lot about their health and about performance and about nutrition, way more than Europeans. I always tell the story how I started my business, Goofy, that was based on this insight that American consumers seem to really struggle with getting or feeling like they're getting enough protein on a plant-based diet. And a lot of my American friends ask me about protein all the time. And at first, when people would ask me, I'd be like, why are people so worried about this? Because Europeans don't think about it in like macronutrients ratios. They don't really worry about protein. Like there's other issues. When I told my family I was eating plant-based, they were like, why would you give up all of our traditions? There were other challenges there. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that it's a little bit easier, not in all parts of the States, but in places like on the coast and these big cities, I think there's way more reception towards plant-based eating. That being said, there's other parts in the world that have big plant-based communities. Germany, I think, is the country with the highest number of vegetarians and vegans in Europe, which you wouldn't think, but they are extremely receptive to that. So, I would say it depends, but I think a lot of the innovative companies are American right now. So you think of these meat replacement companies and all of those, they are very much based in the
States. Michelle here, Isabel. When I came to the US, I had the impression that Europeans eat in generally better, overall eating habits are much healthier than the US. And I think the East Coast and West Coast in the US are probably eating a little, the food is a healthier consumption. I think in the Midwest is a little different, but I think in general, also the quality of the food in Europe that you buy at the store is less saturated with fats and sugars probably than in the US. Now, notwithstanding the fact that in the US, you do have a certain, I would say probably say a minority of people who are very, very self-conscious about their eating habits. But I'm not sure that the majority of Americans are as health conscious as the Europeans on their eating habits.
Yeah, I agree with your point around that, because I think that food in Europe, it's a little bit more of a holistic approach. Like what I was saying before is,
yeah,
American consumers care a little bit more about the nutrition claims, specifically in terms of performance, and they isolate like, high carb, low carb, high fat, high protein. Like it's all about these macronutrients. Whereas in Europe, it's a little bit more of a holistic approach to food. And so I think you're right. I think there's also legislation around production of food. Finding organic food in Europe, it's like the default now. That's not the case in the States. And so you have that. And then in addition, you have the fact that Americans, again, they eat more on the go. There's less time for food. When I first moved here and I would take a lunch break, my coworkers would be like, what is she doing? Well, how could she not be working right now? So I think there's also that approach of, food being something social and more family oriented, or actually taking a break and taking a break from your screen, that is very different in Europe. But I still think when it comes to highly innovative food, like plant-based foods, I think Americans, again, on the coast, are more interested and more curious about that.
Yeah.
A lot of Europeans.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Isabel, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Would you mind closing your screen share so we can see each other? That's okay. Oh, there we are. Thank you so much.
So Isabel, speaking of Dr. Greger, I think he was instrumental in converting me to plant-based, especially because one of my business partners, he was suffering from acute diabetes and he would be on insulin for 15 years. And then he came across Dr. Greger's, all of the videos and all of that information. And now for the last 3 years, he's off insulin and off all medication, and the sugar is way low, and it's all with plant-based diet. So after seeing that, I am so hooked onto whatever you said. Makes so much sense.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, he's really amazing and unique in that way, because he seems to really be reading every nutrition study.
Yeah,
and he will
backed by science. Yeah,
exactly. And then he will digest it and translate it into, normal people language. And so I think he's done a really good job at really kind of explaining and making it more accessible, I think, to people, some of the evidence around plant-based nutrition. Yeah.
Like earlier, I used to go to Europe and carry my whole month of food here, almost every item. It's such a believer of the food there. But now on plant-based, I feel equally healthy. Yeah. It's really made a difference. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Isabel, it's Tony. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, yes.
I have 2 questions. First of all, I thought the presentation was wonderful, so thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Okay. Refined sugars. The biggest new thing the past 2 years or so, it's been monk fruit. Okay. What are your thoughts on that?
So again, I'm not a registered dietitian, so I'm not going to give you actual nutrition advice on this. I'm not a doctor either, although a lot of doctors actually don't really learn about nutrition that much in med school. But I would say, I think the jury is out on monk fruit. I haven't read a lot of research on it. I think it's still a pretty processed sweetener. It's one of these lower calorie sweeteners. And I'm always wary of that, because I feel like it's a little bit of a trick to your system to eat some of these, I want to call them fake sugars, or low calorie sugars like monk fruit or stevia, that maybe come from a plant really far away, but they've still been really processed. And so to me, I'm always like, if I want to eat something sweet, there's enough sweetness in nature. I'll use, as I said, I use date sugar. It's literally just dried granulated dates. So I still get a ton of fiber and minerals from that. So I'd rather eat, maybe less sugar, but real sugar that comes from plants and is in more of like an intact state, versus some of these, processed sugars that are low calorie. I think there's also some research, and I wouldn't be able to cite it now, but in terms of how it reacts in your brain, eating actual carbohydrates versus things that taste sweet, but then your brain is a little bit tricked and you will kind of start craving that. And then either you compensate by eating other things. So maybe then you'll eat more fat or more other things, or you'll just want to continue eating it because you're actually not satisfying, your body in a mechanical way from eating carbohydrates, which actually translates into fuel for your body. So I think that's a little bit like my skepticism around some of these, low calorie sweeteners.
And the second question is, can you tell us about a little bit of what you have started? You have a new startup.
Yeah.
Some of us had a wonderful chance to taste. So can you tell us about Loopy?
Yeah, totally. So Loopy is my new business that I launched with my co-founder Ali on January 1st. We actually started working on it way before that, but we hit the market on January 1st, which was now it's crazy to think about the timing of all of that. So Loopy is here to help people live more plentiful lives, as we like to say. And we are using this ingredient called the lupini bean and making that really the hero for all of our products. And so we just launched with our first suite of products, which are Loopy Bites. They are these little square bars or bites, and that come in 3 different flavors that some of you probably have received, and I'd be happy. Yes, thank you, Michelle, for showing them. And I'd be happy to send you more information about it and extend obviously a discount code and all of that if you're interested. But we're using the whole lupini bean in our bar, so that's pretty unique. Most other bars that are on the market use a lot of refined sweeteners, refined oils, and they use protein isolates, which are very refined as well and don't have any fiber and any other nutrients left. And we're using the whole bean in our bar, so you get about 1/3 of your daily fiber recommendation and 9 to 10 grams of protein. And the goal for our company is to deliver on this protein worry or confusion that a lot of consumers seem to be having when they try to eat more plant-based. I think there's still this conception that if you eat plant-based, you can't be strong and you can't be getting enough protein. And so that's not true. You know, anecdotally, like I have never been as active as I am now. I'm running half marathons and marathons on a plant-based diet. And I used to never actually do any of that before I transitioned into this diet. So I'm definitely feeling like very energized, but I also think I'm never worried about, you know, being deficient in protein. That being said, a lot of consumers are. And so lupini beans really deliver on that because they are the bean with the highest concentration of plant-based protein as well as fiber. And they are basically unknown in the States. They are originally from Europe, from the Mediterranean region, from Italy and Greece. They've been consumed there for centuries, no joke. The Romans already ate lupini beans for the nutrients that they were getting from them. And it's just an ingredient that hasn't really made it to the States yet, but that has a really bright future, I think, in this country. And so we launched with it in a convenient format that is accessible to consumers. And so our bars are really easy as a snack, or if you ever don't have time to prepare your meal, you can rely on one of those. We don't use any processed sugars. We use dates as a sweetener. So it's a really great little snack that keeps you fueled. So yeah, that's what Loopy is all about.
They were very good. I really enjoyed them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. Any other questions?
I had a question for you, Isabel. I noticed about coffee. I've been drinking a ton of coffee, a lot of instant coffee, and I try to dilute the caffeine by mixing in some decaf. But I don't know, is coffee just something we should avoid altogether?
So again, not a doctor here. My take on coffee, or my personal experience, is the older I get, the less I can handle a lot of coffee. So I'll have coffee every morning, but I don't drink coffee after like 11 a.m. because the half-life of it I think it's like 12 hours or something like that. So even if you drink after like midday, you'll still have caffeine in your system when you go to bed. And there is research showing that it affects your sleep. And so what's the issue with that is that, you know, sleep is a little bit like food. It's fuel in a way. And so getting really restful sleep is really important. There's research showing that, you know, if you are sleep deprived, your cortisol levels again will be up. You'll be craving more junk food and more comfort food. So I think it's more like the consequences of drinking too much and it affecting some areas of your life, like sleep, that I personally I'm a little worried about. So I'll just drink it in the morning. But there's a lot of studies also showing, you know, coffee has antioxidants. So it's definitely not something that you should that I think you should be totally cutting out. I do like the taste of it a lot, so I'll have decaf in the afternoon if I feel like I want another cup.
Hey guys, can I share the 7 o'clock cheer?
Yes, please do.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we're doing that too, yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
Are you guys having it in your neighborhoods?
No, not here in this area in New Jersey. It's a little small town. I don't think so, no.
I'm at 21st and 1st, and yeah, it's noisy outside. It's great.
Yeah. Isabel, are you going to share the slides so we can get the resources?
Yes, for sure.
I want to make the curries, and I want to get those burgers that you like.
Yes, they are delicious. I'd be happy to share the slides, and you, Tony, maybe you can send them out, or Jen.
Yeah, I would do
And I'll
that.
tell you that we are on a plant-based diet as of a week ago because,
Woohoo!
well, because we see the correlation with overweight and morbidity with COVID, so we're working on it in my family.
That's good.
Yeah,
All right.
that was amazing. Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you, Claire.
Yeah, if I can just say something, and I don't know, because it was very interesting what you said, and I know about beans because my wife is from Italy, so they also not only eat pasta but also beans. But I have to tell you, I actually lost weight, and I haven't changed my eating habits, except that I don't have any luncheons anymore. But and I'm working 10 hours per day at least. So I guess it's not much that is different. And I think coffee is good. I mean, I never really was affected by coffee. So maybe I'm a little different. I don't know. But but I think it was very interesting. I'm certainly eating meat, but that's, I guess, an approach that is different from person to person. I think it's just important that one does what seems to be good for the person. And I mean, I haven't been, I don't think I ate more chocolate or stuff like that since this all started. So I don't know. Just wanted to say that. Obviously, you have many good reasons for what you said, and it also depends on obviously the health of people. That's something else, and if there's any precondition. I mean, coming back to people returning to the offices, one issue is if people have a precondition, it might be dangerous for them to come back to the office. And which then raises another question: can you ask them? Because then you may be discriminating against them. So maybe that's another topic for another evening or lunch meeting, Tony.
Yeah.
Because bringing people back is, or reopening the office, however you want to call it, is not going to be an easy process.
No, I think that, Sven, that's a good point. And also, at the beginning, we were talking in our office, we were talking about the young people, sending those to the office first because they seem to be less affected. But then the younger people in the office refused because they didn't want to be the canaries to go down into the cave, into the mines. So I think the re-entry is going to be voluntary. But getting back to the food, I think what I noticed personally during this phase is like I ate much more than I normally eat, you know, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I probably drank a little more also. But surprisingly so, with all the tension that was sort of built up, you didn't really notice, you know. Also, I don't have a scale here, so I don't measure myself, but I don't feel that I have gained much weight. I think because the underlying tension that was here at the beginning was quite latent and quite interesting, quite surprising. I don't know what your guys' experience was.
I gained weight, sorry to say. Sorry to say, more eating, more cooking and all.
Yeah.
So I think it depends. And also because of two to 3 months, I could not exercise at all, going for walks because I had foot surgery. So that really impacted. But I think a plant-based diet is, I agree with Sven, it could be good for so many people. I eat lots of plants. I mean, and I love your bars. Lupini, to me, it's very special because when I was little and I was in Italy, that was a snack. that we used to have. You know, they were put into water and you just take it and squeeze it out and you eat that. So that is a really good protein. And you're right, Italians or Europeans really enjoy that. I'm not sure I could give up meat. I would have really difficult time, at least maybe once a week, you know. But we do in our home eat a lot of vegetables and lots of food.
I would.
If I can just, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm going to say there was more alcohol in our house for about 6 weeks, and now we're slowing it down. But it wasn't that bad because we ordered cases and we only went through, let's see, we went through a half a bottle a day. So that's not terrible. That's like a big glass a day.
Is that per person?
Even that, what?
Is that per person?
Yeah.
Nice.
And now we're slowing down. And then we were, thankfully the kids haven't insisted on cookies and potato chips because one day, I don't know what came over me, but I got a bag of potato chips and it was gone in like hours, you know? So then I didn't have that anymore. No. So now it's getting a little under control. And it's nice to have a diet because you know what? To Isabel's point, it's like you decide what you eat all day when you're home. There's no shift or you're not, so you decide, right?
Yeah.
I think our household has been exactly the way you described it, Isabel. At the beginning, we had no idea how long it was going to last. We bought and baked and cooked all the wrong things. And now it's kind of this new normalization. And this is, I just think, perfect timing to think about, okay, that's behind us. It's still, who knows how long this is going to go. So why not start now? Start a healthier diet now. But I'm still going to drink a lot of wine.
Totally. I also think, you know, it's a lot because people were buying a lot of non-perishable foods because they were just really stressed out and worried. And so then people were consuming less fresh vegetables and fresh fruit and things like that. And just to come back to a point earlier, which was made earlier by Swen and others, you know, I think, as I said from the start, everyone has their own bio-individuality. That was one of the big points that I made at the beginning. So this is not a presentation that's supposed to, like, you know, you're not going to go and replicate this exact thing, but there might be nuggets of it that are helpful for you depending on where you are on your journey, what your goals are, what you want to do, what you want to achieve. So I think it's important to keep in mind, like, diet is like very much a spectrum, and it really depends on your individuality, what works for you and what doesn't.
Yeah. I think that was a very good point. But could you share, you mentioned some of the websites where you do your purchases, such as nuts.com and things like that. Would you be able to add those websites or sources? Because that would be very helpful for everyone to sort of like start exploring their how would I say, their food distractions. The other question I would have for the audience is that, would you be able to consult with people individually and discuss, you know, various food intakes, or do you provide that sort of service to discuss with individuals?
You mean like coaching people on?
Yeah, like, you know, something like that.
I'm always happy to answer questions, but I'm very much heads down with Loopy and focused on that. But I do have a few connections that are registered dietitians or plant-based coaches that I'd be happy to connect you with if anyone is interested in, you know, working with someone one-on-one on their diet. I definitely have great resources to share.
That would be helpful. Hello, Greg. Okay. Well, any more
Hello, everybody. Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Hey, hi, Greg.
Hello, Greg.
Well, this was wonderful, really, Isabel, really great.
Really interesting. Isabel, great job. Thank you so much.
Excellent.
Thank you for
excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Talk to
Tony
you
and Janet,
soon.
for organizing.
Okay.
And thank you all for attending.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.